You're watching the Sports and Political channel of LB. If you're not a subscriber to this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share these videos on your social media platforms. Let's get down to business. So, when YouTube banned me for a week, this story was particularly one of the hottest stories that was out here in the atmosphere. And that Dana White was on video getting to fisticuffs with his wife in Cabo, St. Lucas, Mexico on New Year's Eve. Now, what was the response by the mainstream media in regards to this incident? Where there's this wall-to-wall eye in the sky number 5 on the dog coverage involving Dana White? Was there pressure from people like Stephen A. Smith and Molly Karam and Mike Coppinger to suspend and for Dana White to resign, or for Dana White to be fired by Ari Emanuel? No, there wasn't. Matter of fact, this story was treated by the mainstream media with kid gloves. Now, back in, I say, around 2011, you had Dana White's own mama come out and painted a bleak picture of Dana White and his marriage to his wife. Some of the things she said in her unauthorized autobiography about her son and his volatile relationship with his wife Ann during the interview to promote the book. This was some of the things she said. He seems to have lost his character somewhere along the way. He mistreats people. It's terrible the way he speaks to women and treats women. That really bothers me because I don't believe I ever brought him up to be like that. Now, in this interview that she did, she also talked about how he slept with the ring girls. She also talked about how he slept with his sister-in-law at her house. And it made her furious. Another thing she said in that interview was the fact that Dana White's wife gave him a black eye in the honeymoon when they first got married. Now, when have you ever heard of somebody's spouse giving them a black eye during the honeymoon? So when Dana White comes out and says that's the first time that this ever happened in 30 years, you really think I'm going to believe something like that coming from a forked tongue? You really think I'm going to believe that? No, it's the first time this got put into light, but this is not the first time that this has happened. And ESPN, you guys are disgusting because you give this a pass. You give this a pass. And Molly Cam lying out her mouth talk about, oh well, we don't do cancel culture right here. Really, bitch? That's all you did was perform cancel culture on Ray Rice, on Reuben Foster, LeVar Ball. You just did a jihad on Kyrie Irving, and you did one even more recently about before that on Deshaun Watson. So what is you talking about? You don't perform no cancel culture. Y'all treat this situation with kid gloves, but there's a reason why that situation was treated with kid gloves on ESPN, because they were specifically told not to say anything incendiary about the Dana White situation on social media. So, in other words, they couldn't say anything about it. They had a muzzle. There was a gag order placed upon all those employees at ESPN because there was a man who works for ESPN went on Twitter and explicitly stated that fact. There's another reason why this situation with ESPN and Dana White was treated with kid gloves, because the UFC is under contract with ESPN. And there's, if I'm not mistaken, their contract is almost up because ESPN signed a deal with UFC because for a long time UFC was under contract with Fox, but Fox did not renew the contract with UFC. Instead, Fox redid the contract, did a new contract with WWE, and ESPN picked up the UFC contract. And it was, at the time, it was a 5-year deal. So negotiations should be at or near that time where ESPN and UFC are going to renegotiate on a new deal, if that deal hadn't been done already. But I want to play a clip because when it came time for punishment, this is what Dana White said.
We've had plenty of discussions internally with Ari, ESPN. Nobody's happy. Nobody's happy about this, you know. Neither am I. But it happened. And I have to deal with it. And what is my punishment? Here's my punishment. I got to walk around for however long I live. Is it 10.4 years or is it another 25 years? And I gotta, this is how I'm labeled now. My other punishment is that, you know, I'm sure a lot of people, whether it be media, fighters, friends, acquaintances who had respect for me might not have respect for me now. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life that are way more of a punishment than what? I take a 30-day, 60-day absence? That's not a punishment to me. The punishment is that I did it, and now I have to deal with it.
Now, if that is some narcissistic response to what happened, I don't know what is. That's about as narcissistic as you gonna get. Well, I take 30 or 60 days off. Why would I do that? What? Well, I tell you, man. You can't make this stuff up. That is about as nonchalant and as narcissistic and as about detached from reality as any answers I ever heard in my life in response to a scandal that broke out. Let this have been, as my man Octavius TX Man, salute to him, Yusuf Knight in the building. Let this have been Derek Lewis slapping his wife on video. Let this have been Daniel Cormier slapping his wife on video. Hell, let it be John Jones slapping his wife on video. Let it have been Anderson Silva or Tyrone Woodley. You can't make this stuff up. Now I'm going to read an article coming from bloodyelbow.com, and it says Dana White offers narcissistic response for why he won't be punished for slapping his wife. Dana White said the UFC, its employees, and fighters would be hurt if he were punished for slapping his wife. What do you mean the employees and fighters would be hurt? They were not here on video slapping their wives. You were. So how could the employees and fighters would be hurt? The show will go on without you. What's up, Back to Black? Yeah, they never let that down. When Floyd hit a woman, oh man, They ain't never let that down. On Wednesday, UFC President Dana White made his first public appearance since he was caught on video slapping his wife on New Year's Eve. That appearance, which occurred before a hand-selected group of UFC access media. So, you mean to tell me y'all had to hand-select people who can interview y'all? Listen to this. The appearance came before a hand-selected group of UFC access media. Now, why did you have to hand select a group of people that will interview you? You're going to interview the people that you know is going to provide the softballs, that's going to, coddle you and stroke your ego and treat this with the necessary kid gloves that it requires, right? In the early moments of the 15-minute interview White spent on the dais, the UFC boss fielded a question about possible repercussions from the above mentioned video. White's reply was puzzling, narcissistic, and insulting. What should the repercussions be? You tell me. That's what Dana White said. I take 30 days off? How does that hurt me? I told you guys when we were going through COVID would last 10 years. I could sit it out. What would be the problem? It's much like COVID, actually. Me leaving hurts the company, hurts my employees, hurts the fighters. It didn't hurt me. I could have left in 2016. That's what this man said. This is other stuff he said. Do I need to reflect? No, I don't need to reflect. The next morning when I wake up, you know what I mean? I've been against this. I've owned this. I'm telling you that I'm wrong. But listen, we've had plenty of discussions internally. Ari, that's the guy he works for, Ari Emanuel. Ari Emanuel is the guy that owns the UFC. Ari Emanuel is the brother of Rahm Emanuel. Anybody that's from Chicago, Illinois, know about the Emanuel brothers. Rahm Emanuel was the former mayor of Chicago. He helped aided in covering up the murder of Laquan McDonald. Not only that, Ari Emanuel tried to get inside the Trump what's the word? The Trump presidency. He tried to be a member of Trump's cabinet. Ari Emanuel did. Now, one thing about Ari Emanuel that is real telling, when Kanye West had his ordeal going on, he made all kinds of wall-to-wall coverage about Kanye West in the Chicago Tribune and in other media outlets in Chicago. What's up, Crooktown P? Now, I got suspended from YouTube last week when I did a video about Simone Sanders. I got suspended for a week. I didn't go out here, slapping any girl that came across my way. Dana White was on video slapping this woman. And ain't nothing gonna happen to him. Nothing gonna happen to him. That's what else he said. Nobody's happy. Nobody's happy about this. Neither am I, but it happened. I have to deal with it. And what is my punishment? Here's my punishment. I got to walk around this for however long I live as a 10.4 years or another 25 years, and this is how I'm labeled now. My punishment is that. What kind of a punishment is that? Like you give 2 pieces of rat droppings about that. In Crooktown, he doesn't. Ari Emanuel owns the UFC. Dana White just the president of UFC. But Ari Emanuel owns the UFC. And he's not going to suspend himself. He's not going to resign. And Ari Emanuel's not going to do anything to him. If anything, it's just a blip on the radar screen. Let him see it from his vantage point. Ari Emanuel ain't about to do nothing. So if Ari Emanuel had all this smoke for Kanye West, why he so quiet now about Dana White? We had all this smoke for Kanye West. Now, I want to emphasize this because I know there's going to be some people out there that don't comprehend well, that's going to try to misconstrue my words and all that. I need y'all to listen to me. I am not a supporter of Kanye West. But this is deeper than that. I'm not a supporter of Kanye West. Kanye West has done too much selling out of the black community to call myself supporting him. That being said, though, this is deeper than that. We will deal with Kanye West on a separate item. But this is deeper than that. Ari Emanuel has so much to say about Kanye West in the Chicago Tribune and other outlets in Chicago. You know, Chicago's only like the third largest city in the United States, right? He has so much to say there. But he had nothing to say about this. Now, why is that? Why do you have nothing to say about Dana White? Now, who am I supposed to believe? Am I supposed to believe the mainstream media? Or am I going to believe Dana White's own mama, who came out and said that this man and his wife is in a volatile relationship? He's been sleeping around. He's sleeping around with his sister-in-law in her house. He's sleeping with the ring girls, helping one ring girl start her career with Playboy. So who am I supposed to believe? The mainstream, some Bama like Stephen A. Smith and Molly Cam, who sat here and gaslit the whole entire media discourse by saying she don't get involved with cancel culture, while canceling LeVar Ball, while canceling Ray Rice, while canceling other black folks in the process? Or am I believe Dana White's mama? I believe Dana White's mama. Because mommy knows best. His other punishment is that he's sure that a lot of people that be media fighters, friends, acquaintances who have respect for him may not have respect for him now. Like he cares about that either. Because at the end of the day, power does not concede anything. Power doesn't care about your respect. Power doesn't care about your feelings. Power doesn't care that there was an incident at a nightclub in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico on New Year's Eve. Power does not care about any of that. Power only respects one thing: power. And if Dana White was going to be fired, it would have been done so already. Now, Ari Emanuel owns this company called Endeavor. That is the corporation that owns the UFC. If they were to fire Dana White, they would just find some other person to come in and take over the UFC. The UFC is a very successful business. Let's keep this 100. This thing is a very successful machine that Dana White has been the engineer of. If he died tomorrow, the UFC will still continue. So what is he talking about? UFC business officer Campbell and UFC COO Lawrence Epstein know the UFC business and have been around for a long time. While Campbell and Epstein might not be the faces that many associate with the UFC, they are two intelligent and powerful UFC employees who will be able to keep the UFC moving forward and in the black. How? Simply by doing what they have been doing for the entire tenure with the company. What's up, RG Titan? As far as revenue, that has been growing year over year since 2018. The UFC brings in $1 billion a year and expected continuous growth in 2023. Now, one thing that an executive does, or one of the most significant functions of a top executive, is to prepare the organization to function in their absence. So this thing where, well, if I leave, then the company is going to hurt the company. It's not going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt me, but it's going to hurt the employees. It's going to hurt the fighters. It's not going to hurt me. What do you mean it's not going to hurt you? If you died tomorrow, Dana White, the company will still go on without you. What's up, Leroy McConnell? Long time no see. Good to see you, bro. Happy New Year. So obviously, you have to have a couple people in your footsteps learning from you, all the tricks of the trade. But when you're not there, they can carry on the machine. Because I'm pretty sure you've taken vacations before, Dana White. That's why you're in Cabo, St. Lucas, Mexico, slapping your wife from pillar to post, right? You were at the UFC office doing that. And then you sitting up there talking about, well, that's the first time this happened. No, it wasn't. It might have been the first time you've gotten caught, but it's clearly in your 30 plus years, that's not the first time you and your wife gotten into fisticuffs. You mean to tell me it's been all blue sky and red roses, right? Are you trying to tell me that? Now how's your mama coming out saying you got a black eye in the honeymoon? If there's so much blue sky and red roses, why is your mama on video saying you got a black eye in the honeymoon? What you did there? Were you trying to sleep with one of the hotel clerks? That's the first time this has happened. No, this is the first time you got caught doing it. And what's it not say? If it weren't for camera phones, because everybody and their daddy got a camera phone now. If it weren't for camera phones, we probably would have never known about this. If it weren't for social media and people can post stuff in real time, we probably would have never known about this. If this happened back in 1989, when there was no camera phones, there was no social media, this thing would have not been a story. This would have never made it to the media discourse for me to talk about. But even then, they're sitting up here in the media trying to let this thing die, but we're not going to let this die. We're not. When you got Kyle Kuzma or the Washington Wizards coming out, calling this out for what shenanigans that it is, and saying that why is ESPN picking and choosing who they want to go after and picking and choosing who they want to protect? You know who else been saying that? I have. If you follow my channel through any length, what the one thing I always say about the media, they pick and choose who they want to go after with this wall-to-wall, eye-in-the-sky, number $500 coverage. Look what they did with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving posted and shared a link to a documentary that was on Amazon for 4 years. And he was lambasted, crucified, he was destroyed, diminished, and his name was defecated on. To the point he got suspended for 8 games. This man had false labels projected onto him. This man was being dragged by the Anti-Defamation League and Jonathan Greenblatt. He had to go through some kind of 6-step process just to get back into the Brooklyn Nets. And all he did was posted and shared a link. This man physically assaulted someone. And we're supposed to just forget about it. We're supposed to just, look, it happened and no one's happy about it, but we really need to move on from this because we have a stunning UFC card that's going to take place next weekend, and we would really like you to focus on that and not focus on Dana White, pow, across his wife's face. We don't want you to worry about that. We want you to worry about the next upcoming UFC event. We don't want you focusing on Dana White, cacao, his wife cross his face or her face. We don't want you focusing on that. But we're not going to focus on that next UFC event that's coming up shortly. We're going to focus on Dana White going cacao across his wife's face. That's what we're going to talk about. Because see, this notion that, well, I did it and I'm sorry and I'm not going to resign, so just deal with it. No, those days are over with. Those days are over with. You guys in the media go sit up there and let this die, but we ain't going to let this die. We're not going to let this die. The man, old mama, came out saying that he's not a good person. So if the man, old mama, came out saying that he ain't a good person, who in the devil is some random ass Bama to come out of nowhere to say that he's a good person? I believe the mama. Mommy knows best. That's right. Mommy knows best. So when I think of the whole situation with Dana White, this man need to be gone. He need to be gone. Because it's not like Dana White hadn't fired UFC fighters before. He has on a multitude of occasions. Like, let's take a look at what happened last year. January 23rd, or 2 years ago, actually. January 23rd, 2021, Dana White fires undefeated fighter scheduled for UFC 257 main card after insane violation. Basically, the guy didn't show up to the weigh-in. It says, for better or worse, UFC President Dana White has always done things his way. When the sports world shut down in March due to the pandemic, the UFC had a brief stoppage, but White plowed forward against the advice of many experts, and the UFC was the first sport that returned to action in the United States. In hindsight, White proved all these doubters wrong after implementing various health and safety precautions that resulted in minimum fight interruptions. After 8 months of success, White faced adversity this week on Fight Island ahead of UFC's 257 pay-per-view when a top undefeated up-and-coming fighter on the main card inexplicably decided to breach the safety protocols. White found out about it, and the fighter is no longer in the UFC. He fired a fighter because the fighter didn't show up to the weigh-in because of health and safety protocols. Then if we go back to 2020, Dana White fires Instagram model UFC fighter after she quote unquote got smoked. And the person we're referring to in this case is Paige Van Zandt. Now, Paige Van Zandt ended up going to All Elite Wrestling after that. The UFC boss told Paige Van Zandt to look elsewhere for work after she complained about her salary and then lost in the first round. Van Zandt had complained about not being paid enough for fighting and that she said she earned more on Instagram before losing in the first round against flyweight Amanda Ribas at UFC 251. The 26-year-old had used her fame to gain an appearance on America's Dancing with the Stars, where she saw her social media fan base rocket to more than 3.5 million people. What's up, Stephanie? What's up, B-Rad? Salute to you, bro. Van Zandt had a 5-4 UFC record, but only one of those victories came against a fighter with a winning record, and she also lost 4 of her past 6 bouts, which were dragged out over the past 5 years. Wife was left unimpressed with Van Zandt and confirmed he would not be offering a new contract. Then, let's look at this. December 2nd, Dana White fires UFC fighter after cheating. Right? Like he got nerve and he got room to be firing people after cheating. After the mama come out and say how he cheating on his wife, he got nerve to be out here firing people for cheating. According to MMA Fighting, the UFC released a statement regarding an ongoing gambling investigation, and one that affects not only James Krause and Derek Minor, but any MMA fighter who chooses to train with Krause or at his gym. Cancel culture overload is in full effect. Following the statement's release, MMA Fighting Mike Heck and Alexander K. Lee gave their immediate reaction to the news, along with the reveal of Krause's suspension in Nevada and the release of Minner from the promotion following his November 5th loss to Shalian Nuandebeek on UFC Vegas 64. So he fired a fighter for cheating. But he out here sleeping with the damn ring girls. You out here sleeping with you. This man was sleeping with the ring girls and giving them money to start their career with Playboy. But he's firing people for cheating. Oh man, hypocrite. This man's a goddamn hypocrite. Stephen A. Smith, you are a fucking clown. Because you went on First Take running your mouth, treating this thing with kid gloves. Then you come out later on and say, well, he should step down after slapping his wife, So which one is it? Stop playing both sides. That's what's wrong with you guys in the media right now. You come out saying one thing on TV, and then behind the scenes you're saying something totally different. Right. I mean, B-Rad. These guys out here just blatant with their hypocrisy. Look what Vince McMahon doing. Look what Vince McMahon did. Vince McMahon allegedly paid some women up to the tune of $19 million for sexual encounters within WWE. The board finds out about it. He is forced to resign. Stephanie McMahon and Triple H and Nick Khan pretty much running the show for the next 6 months. Then Vince McMahon, all of a sudden, because I told y'all when I did that video about Vince McMahon, I should have done a separate video about this. I told y'all that it was not going to be long before Vince McMahon reared his ugly head again. I told y'all that. When he had controlling, over 80% controlling interest within WWE, I told y'all then that it wasn't going to be long before Vince McMahon comes back. And jumping Jehoshaphat, look what happened. 3 board members got fired, 2 resigned. He brought his 2 other cronies back. He is now the principal figure in WWE again. Stephanie McMahon steps down. And it's not going to be long before Triple H gets shown the door. Watch what I tell you. What do I always say about power? Power respects power. It does not give a fuck about your feelings. It does not care about what's right or what's wrong. It does not care about who might get hurt along the way. They don't care of who might be impacted along the way. It doesn't care about none of that. What's up, G Nation 23? And this is what we're at right now when it comes to the situation involving Dana White. This man basically saying that I'm not going nowhere. Deal with it. That's basically what he said. Deal with it. It doesn't care about hypocrisy. I'm talking about in regards to power. It does not care about the hypocrisy. It does not care about the Dana White slapping his wife. Big deal. So what? It doesn't care about none of that. It just cares about how can I get more power and how can I not lose power along the way. Now, the person, I keep alluding to this because there's one person that can get him up out of here, and that's Ari Emanuel. Ari Emanuel, who is the CEO of Endeavor, can get Dana White up out of here, but he's choosing not to. And one thing I understand about these white supremacists, when you don't hold these guys accountable for what they do or what they don't do, you only embolden them. And that's a fact. When you don't hold these people accountable for the stuff they do, you only embolden them. Now, he's getting busted slapping his wife around at a club. What next? What's next? How can we take this meter to the red line? Yeah, I never let no Bama like Mad Dog Russo, Christopher Mad Dog Russo, holler at me for being late to work. But if you don't get your ass up, boy, But Stephen A. Smith is a clown show. And hit that like button or else you defend this and support and collaborate with this buffoonery. What's up, Cook Smart Sports? Salute to you, bro. If you don't hit the like button, you are one of the people that's a co-collaborator of this buffoonery that's going on right now. This man's sitting up here telling y'all that I'm not going nowhere and you will still watch my fights. That's how nonchalant, that's how much out of touch this man is. That's how narcissistic this man is. Because he know you guys ain't gonna do nothing about it, and you still gonna buy my pay-per-view. Know why? Because people like violence. Let's just keep this 100. People like violence. I like violence. That's why I went to the boxing match last week in DC. When the PBC, Premier Boxing Champions, came to DC, and I went to the press conference, I went to the weigh-in, I went to the fight, I interviewed the fighter who happened to be a couple of doors down from me. I like violence. I'm just not going to support this shit. I'm not going to support UFC. Yeah, he rejected that punishment. Of course he did. Of course he did. You know why he can reject that punishment? Because he and Ari Emanuel are good friends. You really think Ari Emanuel going to punish this guy? Ari Emanuel ain't about to do nothing to Dana White. And on this day, I give my honor and praise and say happy birthday to the Honorable Dr. Khalid Muhammad. Dr. Khalid Muhammad will denounce all this bullshit that's going on. he would have denounced all this nonsense that's going on. And we got dudes out here bootlicking and buck dancing and shoe shuffling and corn shucking over this man. But this ain't nothing new with Stephen A. Smith. Y'all ought to know. Look what happened a couple months ago with Jerry Jones. A photo of Jerry Jones when he was a teenager at a high school in Little Rock, Arkansas back in 1957. When he's amongst another group of white boys try to stop some kids from going in to the elementary to the high school. And what does Stephen A. Smith do with that? Oh man, that was 65 years ago. He rolling around in a helicopter, chopping it up with his buddy, his BFF, Jerry Jones, while smoking a cigar, laughing, cheesing, like a goddamn chessy cat. And then when he caught backlash behind that, what did Stephen A. Smith do? He went on his No Mercy podcast and he wanted to call himself giving it to black folks who call him out on his buffoonery. You're not giving me anything. I want to give you a kick in your ass. That's what I really want to do, but I don't promote violence, right? I don't promote violence. Just something in my head I'm feeling at the time. So what about when my homie Tom Bennis ran up on you? Well, what about that, Stephen A? You forgot about that? Oh yeah, you don't do the cameras then. All the other times you're out here shucking and jiving on ESPN sets. But when a good brother run up on you with a camera and all of a sudden now the lion don't got so much courage. Get the fuck out of here, man. Clown show. The man old mama came out and said he made a joke of his own marriage. But I'm supposed to believe Marley Camp and Stephen A. Smith. I'm supposed to believe Mike Coppinger. I'm supposed to believe anybody that's going to come out in defense of Dana White. yeah, okay. Definitely not doing that. Definitely not doing that. I mean that shit. Because this blatant hypocrisy, but because it's one thing for hypocrisy to be behind the scenes, but we're just going to bring this blatant hypocrisy out to the open, and we're not supposed to do anything about that just because your blatant hypocrisy is out in the open, right? Except we are going to do something about that. And if you don't support this nonsense, then you should not support UFC. Because see, the only way I understand that these guys get up out of there is when the day they start making the company money. Dana White has brought in billions of dollars for this company. You think they want to let that go? You think Ari Emanuel going to fire Dana White? Dana White bringing his company billions of dollars in TV deals and revenue, ticket sales, endorsements, all that stuff. You really think Ari Emanuel better let that go? Until Dana White stopped making him money. And the day Dana White stopped making Ari Emanuel money is the day Ari Emanuel will cut Dana White loose. Now, this motherfucker ain't starving. This motherfucker worth $500 million. He's not starving. He's not going to be hurting for money. He's not going to be in the corner with a Campbell soup can with a nickel in it, rolling around, talking about asking for spare change. He's not doing that. Oh yeah, Jerry Jones. Let's talk about, because I did a video about this, B-Rad. I did a video about this a while back, about his paternity test. So is that woman your daughter, Jerry Jones? Is that woman your daughter? That woman came out of nowhere saying that she was your daughter. Now, is that woman your daughter or not, Jerry Jones? But back to this Bama right here. Back to this Bama right here. You really think just because you got to live with the stain of beating your wife? No, you've been beating your wife. It's just the first time you got caught on camera. You've been beating your wife. The first time this happened. You really think people gonna believe that? Look, I might have been born during the day, okay? It just wasn't yesterday. You're not going to sit here and perpetuate that nonsense out here in the atmosphere and think I'm going to go for that. And think, well, maybe it was the first time Dana White beat his wife because, this white supremacist up here is an upstanding citizen and he's never done anything wrong except when the mama come out in an unauthorized book and holds an interview saying that he slept with young girls, slept with the sister-in-law, he's drunk with power, he's not he lost himself along the way, all this other stuff, then it's going to make me do a 180 about this notion that he's an upstanding citizen, that he did nothing wrong. So how you explain your wife giving you a black eye on New Year's Eve? That's one thing I want to know. Who you been fucking around with on your honeymoon? That's not New Year's Eve. On your honeymoon. Who you been messing with on your honeymoon that caused your wife to give you a black eye? Go, go Clippers. All right, whatever, bro. Whatever you. Go Clippers. Whatever. Hey, nothing wrong with you for being loyal. Can't knock you for being loyal, even if Kawhi Leonard isn't. But anyway, back to this Bama Dina. Back to this Bama Dina White. Now, what in the devil did you do that caused your wife to give you a black eye in your honeymoon? And this was going on for 30 years? Damn near 30 years. Shit's insane. Now, I got an article I'm going to read. It's the last article I'm going to read coming from Deadline. Coming from Deadline. Ari Emanuel asked to remove Dana White by California politicians. While Dana White saying losing his UFC perch would be no punishment to him, Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel has been slammed by the California Legislature's Women's Caucus for continued silence after a leaked video showed the sports boss striking his wife at a New Year's Eve party in Mexico. Every day that Mr. White's actions go unaccounted for, your silence becomes more piercing and troubling, the influential Golden State political group said in a letter to Ari Emanuel that was published online. Well, you know what, California? One way y'all can mitigate this is whenever the UFC decides to go to Staples Center or Chase Center or the other arena that's out there, Sacramento or whatever like that, y'all can basically tell Ari Emanuel to kick rocks. That's one way you can send your message to the UFC and the Dana White and the Ari Emanuel that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated. Whenever it wants to come to California for a UFC pay-per-view or a UFC on ESPN or whatever like that, y'all can set the precedent by telling them to kick rocks. You can tell Ari Emanuel that as long as Dana White is the UFC president, your event will never come back here. You can say that. That'd be one way to get the message across. That'd be one way to get the message across. As long as Dana White, the UFC president, we will not bring the UFC back in these arenas out here in California. There you go. make sure you give me the credit for cooking up the idea. Now, in the days since the video was released, you have remained silent, declared Group Chair Senator Nancy Skinner and Vice Chair Assemblywoman Cecilia Aguilar Curry on behalf of 17 female state senators and 32 state assemblywomen. Your continued silence speaks volumes. They noted before turning Mel Gibson and Kanye West critical Emmanuel's words on him. As you once wrote, silence and inaction are not an option. Oh, so Ari Emanuel is a hypocrite too. Ari Emanuel, you said about Kanye West and about Mel Gibson about how silence and inaction is not an option, and yet you're dead silent. And you're giving no action to the situation here with Dana White. Why is that? Why is that? At this point, thousands of young men, women, and adults worldwide have seen the video of Mr. White striking his wife. We've also seen his apology. What we have not seen is any consequences for his actions. As CEO of Endeavor, the UFC's parent company, you have the authority to decide who leads UFC, which is one of the world's most watched sports leagues, with millions of fans across the globe. Mr. White is not the only external face of UFC. He is the leader who sets the expectation for the athletes as well. Like the Disney-owned ESPN, which has a contract until 2024 to broadcast UFC matches, Endeavor reps have made a peep about White since the video went viral last week. The company did not respond to requests or comment from Deadline in this latest chapter in this sordid tale. As the California legislatures and others have pointed out, Emmanuel has often staked out a moral higher ground as he built Endeavor, most recently calling on companies not doing business with Kanye West. After the rapper made an anti-Semitic rant. In 2010, he famously cut ties with WME client Mel Gibson after Mel Gibson was out here making racist slurs. So this is where we at. This is where we at when it comes to Dana White. He's not stepping down, and his bosses ain't trying to fire him. But that doesn't mean we're going to get off of this. We're not. We're not getting off this by a long shot. Now, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share these videos on your social media platforms. And last but definitely not least, shouts out to the LDBC. This your man. Scream at me. Oh!